found that historically, women have been and are still the leading force in fashion sense, style, and design. But if you take a closer look, you'll see that it is not the female of the species that dictates fashion, but in fact the man. In today's show, we will examine the mere strength that men have yielded, not only over society, but also over trends in clothes, as early on as the Mughal era. We will also reveal how the ensembles adorned were not merely for clothing's sake, but they symbolized power, wealth, at a time actually when royals did really rule.
The Mughal emperors, they used to wear very bold, loud colors mixed with lots of jewels, and the fabrics ranged anywhere from silks to woven silks to cashmere to wools. But everything that they wore had a certain degree of sheen or shine attached to it, which was associated with mobility.
In today's Pakistani fashion, it's the woman who defines what the man should be wearing if they're getting married. So we always have to sort of match the dulha to the dulhan rather than the dulhan to the dulha, right? In that time, what used to happen was that the men's garments were far more luxurious and far more, over the top and defined fashion than women's garments. If men was all about tailoring, so look at brands like Civelro, look at, Sadar mein purane zamane ke tailors, everything, it was all about the tailored look. Times have changed. Now menswear is not about the tailored look. Now menswear is all about what looks good.
I mean, until a long time we wanted to liberate women, but I think it's about time men got liberated. So I think men are going through a liberation period right now, and part of that liberating process is the metrosexual male, and the metrosexual man is there, and he's taking care of himself, and he spends more time in caring for himself and grooming himself.
Independence aside, garments have assumed multifaceted roles throughout history. The bond between identity and clothing has been firmly linked, and in the past, regional and hierarchical positions were further enhanced by the manner of dress worn. But clothing did not just distinguish individuality. Ironically, it also perpetuated a form of equality and harmony amongst society.
A garment can either unite a bunch of people, unite an army together, let's say, unite a force, unite a jamaat or a student body, or a political party. Okay, one garment can do this magic or does it all. A simple example would be, why does everybody wear the same garment in army or military or navy or hence and so forth?
It appears that men, especially those within the monarchy, played a key role in molding the shape of fashion at a time when cuts in clothes didn't even exist. The shaping of styles was also influenced by the invaders. The power-thirsty warriors brought with them their own distinct mode of dress and fabric. And so, a blurring of boundaries conceived a blurring of dress, and in effect, created a new cultural identity.
The uncut cloth, a term synonymous with the most primitive form of clothing in the subcontinent, especially in the form of the dhoti, was the initial cog in the wheel of fashion. Archaic documents lay claim to the fact that Babur, the first Mughal emperor, on his voyage to the region in 1526, discovered that the people there wore thinly veiled clothing. Stitched outfits were unheard of.
The Indians till such time wore either dhotis, or they just, if you go into Indian mythology, there is no kurta. Most of the Indian goddesses and the gods did not wear anything on top. They just had a little dhoti wrapped around themselves. Or even if they did, they would just put a piece of fabric around their body. So it is when Islam entered the subcontinent, that is when the kurta came in with it.
The legacy bestowed upon us by the Mughals cannot be ignored. Their patronage of cloths such as shawls epitomized elegance and sumptuousness. The era of the emperors was also rich in excellent craftsmanship. Despite being characters woven into the fabric of the past, the Mughals may be considered one of the most progressive civilizations of the subcontinent. Rulers such as Akbar and Jahangir adorned themselves in elaborate jewelry and clothing. And it is because of their attention to detail, when it came to what they wore, fashion trends were set by them. One of the styles which travelled with the Mughals on their voyage from Central Asia was what can now be considered the earliest design of the Angharka. The item of clothing was a coat known as the jama, which overlapped from the front. The fabric of the coat was bulky, keeping in mind the climate from where they originated, which later was replaced with a more delicate material. The length of the coat varied. Solidifying his reputation as a trendsetter, Akbar spurred the evolution of the jama by having the slit removed and adding a flare. The sovereign also distinguished religious identity by demanding the Hindus to tie the Angharka on the left and the Muslims on the right. It is interesting to note that the magnificence of the garments worn by these majestic men determined the apparel worn by the women of that period.
The costumes worn by the emperors, such as the Angharka, and the patronage of the Kashmiri shawl heralded an attitude of progress when it came into fashion. It has been said by many that the Mughal era by far had the greatest influence on the subcontinental civilizations that followed them. Fashions were not only influenced by Asians. The British look, one that personified their stoic outlook on life, had a great impact on the watering down of design and color in the region. And the glamour that embodied the grandeur of the Mughal realm lost some of its pomp and romp and gave way to more sedate tones and severe cuts.